We didn't have recycling back in the day.
Yeah, like
They
this
just
this
started doing that
this
in the
new
last
era,
like
we're
what, two
being
or
more
three years.
conscious. All right, I got volumes, everything up, clean, good to go. So I'll just go ahead and let the good folks know that we are recording for another episode of For the Taste Show. Make sure that you follow at For the Taste on Instagram and go to www. Side note, it don't just make you almost feel like an old person when you do the three W's and actually say them out loud instead of just saying the actual link, but some folks need the W's. So www.forthetasteshow.com. Forthetasteshow.com to be able to check out past episodes. There's uploaded merch that's going on there in the next 7 to 10 days, so you'll just see it coming soon on that spot, but be able to see any past content and any links to be able to advertise or any of the folks that we've had on our show and what they're promoting. So with that, bring along the good man that is on this particular episode with a little backstory. Many moons ago, back when folks had hairlines that were a little bit stronger, before we figured out the game, I was able to have a good run with this dude here. He actually taught me a lot during the process of going through the graduate program over at the University of Phoenix. So the best way to say it, you get out what you decide to put in. I ain't going to pitch bail to them for what they had going on with the different, lawsuits and such, but we made it work out for us to where it was able to advance folks' careers. I've been able to take a look from a distance at what the good brother's been up to, but he moved into a new role that has more of a connection to the local Las Vegas community, and he's got a sports background mixed in with just hustling and making some sales happen. I wanted to bring on the good man Damon Cross for this episode of For the Taste. Mr. Cross, how goes it for you?
It's going good, man. It's like you said, it's been a couple years, and I mean, you hit it on the head, man. Like not just University of Phoenix, life is what you get out of it, man. Gotta put in the equity and the sweat, and you gotta take what you want from it. So I've been good, just trying not to go stir crazy because I am not built to be stuck in the house. But this is the new climate and the new era that we're in, unfortunately. So just making things work.
Yeah,
So
man.
I'm excited to catch back up with you.
Definitely. I appreciate it. And you went ahead and just went into something that I've had to experience through in a different capacity with how I work. But with you being in hospitality, working from home during these days, how has it been to be able to plan out doing events knowing that you're inside trying to plan something that you can't necessarily get to?
Well, that's been a little bit of a challenge for us. Is in my new role, I strategically plan all the special events for the state of Nevada for the Anheuser Busch brand. And as we've talked about offline, we've had some major events come that were scheduled that have been canceled. So the NFL being one, Life is Beautiful, know what's going to happen with EDC, and these are all fundamental events for not just my brand and my company, but the lifeblood of the city and being able to drive tourism and gaming and spending here locally. So it's been a challenge for us in terms of securing events because you just don't know what kind of restrictions you're going to have. I mean, personally have agreed with the phase system that's been implemented by the governor simply because I think we need to be a little more cautious about how we're allowing the gathering of individuals and the population. And Nevada has been lucky to not have been hit with the COVID-19 rates such as other areas that are densely populated. So for me, it's really been kind of looking at different scale of events now, looking at more hyper local, more events that are virtual in nature. We did some partnerships with some social sports entities. There have been some opportunities with esports that we're exploring. The big key is looking kind of in that new space of smaller gatherings that will create more of a localized and connection. Whereas before, you can go to a Life is Beautiful or a large scale event and just worry about, kind of hitting the masses. Now we need to be a little more strategic because these events are going to be smaller in scale and we need to make it more intimate in nature to connect with the consumer.
That makes sense. And I think one of the benefits that Vegas will have is we've got enough properties throughout the city to scale up and scale down for events. You think of some other cities throughout the country where they only have just their big arena. They might have one club or, 25 to 5,500 venue that would be of A grade quality to potentially bring a new normal event to, or even a concert event or anything, because it's just not what they're used to. Vegas, we have that. And there's going to be a few other cities around the country. So could you give a little bit more detail into where you think that maybe those type of venues are going to be more in play here in the next upcoming months?
I think that it's really going to come down to what restrictions there are on gathering sizes. Too hard. It's too early to tell what that's going to look like. To be honest with you, to your point, I think that if you look at what Vegas has become, we had really transitioned away from small and intimate to really being large in scale in general. If you look at a lot of the new locations that have opened up over the last couple of years, it's been less about like a small intimate room. It's been like, hey, how can I have this massive space that can be dual purpose? Let's just take, we look at something that recently closed, Chaos over at the Palm. They picked a space that virtually could run for 24 hours. Even Dre's is a good example of that, which started off as a small intimate location, now made it so like it's almost like a 24-hour venue, because now you've got a day party side, you've got all that stuff. So from that side of the business, I think that it's really too early to tell what's going to happen, and until we know what restrictions are going to be there, we're not going to know. Now, I think we have the luxury from a performance standpoint. We have a bunch of venues that can really fill that void. I mean, we've got several smaller scale theater type venues that can host smaller intimate concerts, but now we've got two large scale newer venues. T-Mobile's not really relatively new, but it's newer in scale. It's less than 10 years old, and now you've got Allegiant Stadium. We've got those. You also got your standard, the old school Thomas and Mack location in San Boyd. It's just too early to tell, I think, in my opinion, to know what's going to happen. But to your point, there's varying scale venues here that should be able to fit whatever those restrictions are. Some may be more challenging than others, facilitate some of those, but some of those will be a better fit. So that's kind of my take on it.
I think that's what gives us that chance to be able to pick up on some stuff. That NFL stadium coming through with the Raiders, it does change up the dynamics of what Vegas can actually bring in, because any of these reports that you're hearing from different reputable sports sites and general news sites that, let's say it's an MLB or an NFL, they'll say one East Coast city and then they'll bring up Vegas, just because we have the buildings, we have some of the large scale to be able to facilitate some of these operations if they were going to bring 3 or 4 teams at one time. And it's amazing to think of that, just when 12 years ago, a lot of the city didn't know how it was going to reset itself. So as much as they say that Vegas is still about gaming, which it is, they have tried to diversify the image and the income of how the city's going to get by.
No, I agree there wholeheartedly. If you look at Vegas, and we've gone through some evolutions where the city was based on gaming, and they tried the family outlet, and that didn't do extremely well. And then they rode the coattails of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas for a very extremely long time. And I think they realized that there's a larger opportunity here to cater to not just the gaming community, but enrich entertainment in general. So then you started to have the residencies come into play. It had go from artistry residency to DJ residency to now you have chef residence. And I think that our city is one of the few that's unique that can encompass all those in a very small footprint. I think that's why we've been hit so hard with the COVID-19 outbreak and pandemic, if you will, is simply because our city thrives on gaming and tourism and entertainment. All three of those industries are virtually at a halt. So we have had to kind of stop what is our main blood flow. So I think, kind of to your point, we've got some diversified opportunities. So now I think that the next question is how does not just Vegas, but the state of Nevada become more diversified in its local revenue stream? Because if something like this happens again, how do we sustain the income, jobs, just the nature of how the state functions, and not be at a complete standstill? You and I have been very lucky to be in a role where, stay-at-home orders don't necessarily affect us. During the pandemic, people are drinking more beer than they do regularly. So for us, it's still busy. Now, we lose a big portion of our outlets because the liquor stores are closed, the bars and all that stuff are out. But I mean, they are tearing big box retail, our large fat grocery stores, and our convenience chains. They're blowing through product like there's no tomorrow. A lot of different things to factor in that statement.
Yeah, it's amazing. The cost of eggs went up 16% for some reason. You can get a 12-pack for 20% less because they just floating out right now. But that's funny. It's a way to be able to when you see the city like you're talking about, that we're part of what I guess you would say in some ways essential, functioning business that still, I think I'm seeing the city have a better opportunity to bounce back when they do diversify, because our type of jobs, even when our parents came to the city, they weren't around. It was almost 100% gaming. And we're still going to always be gaming heavy. But I think with people moving from other cities that may not end up bouncing back the same way, and their family might be lifelong contractors, the West is still going to always have contracts. And you may end up getting those people to come here, and they'll help slowly but surely try to help change the economy streams that are coming into the state. A lot of folks end up forgetting, though, about 2/3 of the state isn't necessarily even owned by Nevadans. It's government land. So we're only really talking about the hot pocket of southern Nevada and then the Reno Sparks area riding to the Lake Tahoe line. So there's two different areas that are diverse in how they can get money, and one takes in a lot more off of the gaming revenue than the other. Northern Nevada has almost like a different vibe to it when you go up. Fun fact, Reno might be the biggest little city in the world, but it ain't necessarily somewhere that I think I want to go to when I think of gaming. That's always going to be Vegas. But they do have a few other projects that are going on up in Northern Nevada that are trying to bring in other lines of revenue. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out through the state in the whole. I remember during the recession years that we ended up having a good chunk of Southern California people coming in when things started to bounce back. So it's likelihood that people will get tired of paying those high taxes.
I think the big thing between Southern and Northern Nevada is just they're two different communities. Northern Nevada seems a little more close knit. It has more of a small town feel to it when it's not necessarily a small town. Just people seem to be more intricately connected. When we talk about the differences in businesses, both are sustained and have the gaming industries and have entertainment, and both are, I think, primary revenue drivers is tourism. When people go to Northern Nevada, like to Reno and Tahoe, it's more of a leisurely vacation. They're going up there to relax, enjoy what the communities and more natural elements that are provided for those areas. Tahoe is known for the some of the best ski resorts, not just in the country but in the world. I mean, they've hosted the Winter Olympics, they've hosted X Games. So there's some premier resorts there, and then you transition to the summertime, and it's some of the most beautiful real estate there is,
Yep.
in terms of being out there in that natural element. Reno has just kind of always been, like you said earlier, the littlest big city in America, and it's one of those where it's a very unique space, and people can go there and relax, and they can get a mild taste of what they can experience here in Southern Nevada, but they can utilize that to kind of transition and relax. When people come to Vegas, they are coming really blow through some money and stress in a very high intense, high energy environment. This is our city is pretty much extremely nonstop, and there are very few places like that in the world. So, you look at Vegas and people aren't coming to Vegas to relax. They're coming to ramp up, experience all of the top tier entertainment, fast nightlife, music, food, all those different things. I think those are the vast differences between different areas. And I think when you think about it, I don't know that anywhere else offers such diverse but similar in experience, if you will. Two different types of experience, higher and leisure. But where else can we think of that offers those two things in such close proximity to one another?
There might be certain cities throughout the country that might have a few of those items, but you've got to drive from an hour here to an hour there. Hell, even if you're in Southern California, it might take you 3 hours to get from the coastline over in OC to be able to get to Staples Center. And they're all within, technically the same area, but it's not the same kind of experience. So Vegas has that advantage when things do eventually open themselves back up. Brought up a point about that our city down here versus Northern doesn't really sleep. And it was a couple weeks back I saw that you went out on a bike ride down on the Las Vegas Strip at night, and it was relatively quiet. So for folks that don't live in Las Vegas, how was it like to actually see what you saw while you were on that ride?
It was very kind of eerie to see the strip like that. Oddly enough, I've seen the strip that bare, and it's only happened one time. I went out to have brunch at Strip Burger with my aunt who was in town for New Year's, and we went on New Year's morning. And we met at like 10 a.m. There was no one out there. Actually, take that back. The one person we saw James Harden and his crew, which looked like they were doing the walk of shame, coming from somewhere and hanging out. But back to the original point, it was quite hilarious. I mean, not quite, but quite surreal to see the strip like that, and be able to kind of go down and just kind of see the different areas. And the lights were still active, but you just didn't have the same energy. You didn't have like excitement was there. You just kind of felt like something's missing. You just knew it. Obviously you can physically see it, but the emotional connection that you have to the city, like when I step outside and I drive out my community and I can see the strip, I'm in awe of seeing the designs of those buildings every time I see them. It never gets old. See those buildings and see what they are. I never get tired of looking at them. But to see that, to know that area was just kind of what it is, and then also just the personal connection I have with that work there. It's their livelihood. I have in my industry. I've become friends and counterparts with multiple people across all the different companies that are down there, and to know some that and Vegas is unique. You have seasonal workers that bank on our high tourism summer months to primarily fund their lives. Where they're virtually screwed right now because their livelihood's impacted by the pandemic, but also they don't know when they're going to be able to go back to work, and they don't know what kind of scale they're going to go back on. You look at the other side of the business where marketing and other entities and all these companies are having to make massive workforce changes just to maintain the business model that they have. And it's not to say that that's right, wrong, or indifferent. Unfortunately, that's the nature of business. Is you have to make changes to kind of sustain the business model, and unfortunately, some of the first things you change within a company is your workforce. And that's troubling within itself. So it's surreal to know that this pandemic has impacted us on so many different levels, and not just from having to stay in the house and quarantine. Some people's livelihood is completely changed.
Absolutely. And knowing that they say the greater state of Nevada has about 300,000 people that are in the gaming space, I'm sorry. It just reminds me of some of the households that might be two casino households. And just, I tip my hat to those guys. Keep your heads up to those listeners that are going through those things. I will say when we do open back up, there's going to be a phase even with the consciousness of casinos opening up in Nevada. It's as much as we might put in the fail safes and do above the state of the art industry grade requirements to be able to make people feel comfortable, they still have to get here and they still have to feel comfortable enough to want to stay here and leave money here, like you brought up. How long do you think, just even in a ballpark, would it take them a little less time than they probably are projecting?
Well, I mean, from everything I've seen, is there are massive changes going into the casino industry where they are implementing social distancing measures and limiting human contact in that space. So I think that the environments are going to change drastically. The one thing I do feel is because of the aura of Vegas, I think this is one of those few cities that when we open up, we're going to have a huge influx of people that have been chomping at the bit to get out of the social distancing and the quarantining mentalities. And I think that is where we're going to have to be very vigilant on managing that process so that we don't further increase the situational stuff with the pandemic. I mean, like I said, our state has not been hit as hard as some of the other areas, and I think that a lot of that's because the local government was able to shut down the strip and the massive gathering locations as quickly as they did. So that really helped. So I know that that's going to change. I think that we're going to get a very quick hit of people coming in. I think that will then plateau and level off as different things changes. But I think it's really going to boil down to how the country reacts to the pandemic that's happening, and how we level off on the level of people that are getting contracting COVID-19, unfortunately. So
Well, do you
I,
think
I hope I hope it happens sooner.
it, when the casinos do open up, do you think that they'll leave the nightclubs closed until basically the very end?
I don't know that it will be based on that. I think it will be purely based on what restrictions are for gather. So nightclubs are really essentially a great breeding ground for COVID-19 in that respect. I want them to open. Personally, I have a lot of friends and professional contacts that are in that world, and that's how they make. I think it also is a great outlet for people to be able to go and experience and interact. But I do strongly agree that we need to be socially responsible with how we're managing them. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be based on waiting for the last thing to open. I think it's purely going to be based on what restrictions are there for group sizes and congregation, and if there is a way for them to open those within respect to those limitations, I think they'll open those. But I think each of those entities wants to be responsible. No one wants to be the first to open, and then you have a massive, mini pandemic in your location,
Right.
and then that will be very hard to recover from.
That makes sense. I mean, you sold me on it because at first, like, I don't know, I might think that it'll just be we're just gonna keep them closed until then. And of course, I have that empathy for the people that are in that, in the hospitality because we come from it. Uh, but I don't know. You sold me on the fact that it may just be depending on how the national case is looking, not just from people just being overly conservative of not wanting to at least try to open them up. But we'll see. Now, I've noticed your path, like we talked about at the beginning of the pod, of coming in to that graduate program and being able to build our careers out since then. It seems that during that time, sales has always been something that you had a passion for. You tend to talk with people and you try to explain to them that the better salespeople, it's not something that you just learn. In some ways, you have to have that skill set and be born with it. And then you learn how to be able to craft it and make it better. What intrigued you to always, want to stay in the sales space? And what are your thoughts about people that say that they're not salesmen, but they tend to be some of the best salesmen?
I think sales is, I mean, for me, I naturally fell into sales because I've always been really good at talking and understanding people and their personality. So to me, the biggest key in being an effective salesperson is being a very effective listener and being able to understand what what your products and services are and being able to convey that to whoever your potential client is. And that takes a blend of being able to understand what their business is, what their KPIs are, and being able to then translate what you have into something that could benefit their business. So for me, I've always kind of stuck to that in the natural sense. I've transitioned from when we met. I had gotten out of sports, but I was working in wireless. As a wireless representative for Metro PCS at the time, my job was to go out to different accounts and help sell in our products and services. Well, that seemed very easy for me because all I had to do was like, hey guys, here's an opportunity to make more money. Here's how you're gonna make more money, and there's more margins here than the competitors. So that seemed very, very easy. I left that position to go over to UNLV, and that became a little more challenging because you have underachieving sports teams that when you're selling sports products, it's all based on wins and losses. It's all based on attendance. And I went to UNLV when attendance trending down based on the level of success they had in the past, but we still were able to secure significant partnerships because we were really the only sports entity in town. Then transitioned over to social sports and worked at USA Today and did national festivals, USA Today Wine and Food Experience, USA Today High School Sports Awards, and now transitioned over to Anheuser-Busch. So if I had to offer any insight to sales, it's really just understanding you got to know who you are as a person. And really, like, when it comes down to it, you're selling yourself to your potential client. You're selling the fact that they need to have faith in you and your products and services, that it's going to help move their business in the direction that they want. And a lot of times, a lot of people that are really good at sales, I don't necessarily know if they're good salespeople. I think they just have very efficient products. I think the measure of a good salesperson is going in and selling a product that's not a prime brand, not a driver in that respective area, and being able to be successful there. And that was one of the things that I was able to accomplish early on. But a lot of that was because I knew who I was as a seller and I knew who I was as a person. So I knew how to translate that information that was best for me, being able to communicate that to who needed to hear it.
I agree. With knowing that there's going to be probably a job shift, not only because of what's going on with COVID, but also because of the change in technology and industry, there's going to be more people going out there to try to create their own opportunities. And even if they don't believe that they have sales in that job or that creation that they're doing, there is a sales function to it. What would you say would be three core things that they should try to consider if they're going to go out there and be an efficient salesperson?
B, know your strengths and weaknesses. Very essential to know those. To know, for me, I'm a really good speaker, and then I'm also very good at reacting to things on my toes. So when you get thrown some of those curveballs and those objections and hurdles that you have to overcome, I naturally find it easier to navigate some of those. That's not the case for everyone. So you need to be ready to be able to deal with those. Be a very effective listener, because a lot of times when you're in sales and you're talking to someone and you're not even pitching, you're just presenting the product, they will tell you what they're looking for. It's your job to then take what you have and transform that into what they want to hear for the pitch. So it's listening and really being an active listener, because a lot of times when we're in sales, we're just waiting for certain keywords. And then automatically we say, oh, well, yeah, they said this. So now that my light bulb went off, and now I like, oh, now I'm going to go pitch. And that's a lot of times why you go in there and you might lose a sale, because you didn't actively listen to what they were talking about. And not just actively listening. Ask pertinent questions. Like, you don't want to ask the basic run of the mill questions. You really want to understand, like, based on whatever products and services you're promoting, you need to understand like what they're looking for. How does this change their business? And don't be afraid to be like, oh, it's not a good fit. All right, now I'm gonna keep moving. And the last thing is you have to keep a level of dedication and confidence there, because sales is a numbers game. You are going to get significantly more no's than yes ever. It's always going to be. I describe this as like most of our relationships in life. If you think about it, it's going to be quantity over quality, and what that means is you're going to have more relationships that don't work out in life versus the ones that do, that are quality. That doesn't mean that that's a negative thing. Just know that you're going to have, and in sales, how's that translate? You're going to have more no's than you do yes. But when you get those yeses, you need to make sure you're maintaining those, because it is so much easier to maintain an account than to acquire a new one. So know that going into the sales game, people are going to tell you no every day. You may not get a yes every day, but when you get that yes, you take care of that yes. And then that yes then translates into other yeses.
Sales isn't built for everybody, because some people can't necessarily take a no, or they can't take having to deal with a counter and a pivot to be able to get to the final answer that they might need. So for the folks that are planning on getting into it, I wish you success, but just also be aware that there's a lot of skill that goes into it that you're going to have to make sure you pay attention to and consistently hone along the way. So I'd say spot on what you brought up, man. What would you end up saying to the folks that are residents of our city as far as a word of positivity as we try to get into these summer months of knowing what could be coming up for us being in the city of Las Vegas?
I think the one thing I would say is I look at this is going to be a short-term sacrifice for long-term sustainability. And I think that oftentimes is very challenging in American culture. We have prided and celebrated on short-term successes and short-term growth. And with this now, we have some people that are really fighting vigorously to open everything back up to business as usual. And I think we need to if we look at it, we need to be responsible socially for each other. May each of us is impacted significantly differently. And I understand that it is more challenging for others that are not working than it is for maybe someone like myself that has not particularly been impacted by the pandemic. But I would ask that each of us stay the course and be responsible, not just for ourselves but for our fellow Nevadans. That we need to be smart about how things progress, because Nevada could very easily be just like New York and some of the other states that are significantly impacted by the pandemic, because the nature of our local economy is based on large gatherings, and based not just based on large gatherings, based on large gatherings and an influx of multiple people from multiple destinations, which is how this pandemic got spread. People came from one place, went to another, went to another, went to another, and that's how it's transpired and continued to grow. So I have really been happy with the strategy that our local government has implemented. It is not favorable in everyone's eyes, but I think it has been socially responsible to do things the way they've done. We've seen the interview from the mayor, and we've seen different things that come off that way. So we really need to be very vigilant on how we manage this, because if we do this wrong, and then the state of Nevada becomes another pandemic central based location, will we really be able to recover? So in thinking of that hindsight, we have to look at, does it make sense to rush into this and get everything back to going, and hopefully that we have all the measures, but does it make sense to take our time and implement necessary changes that then limit the amount of risk. Not to say it's going to stop it, but at least we've given ourselves significantly more opportunities to limit the amount of exposure that we have with this, the pandemic, to control what we need to do and keep us safe and keep us healthy. Because if we have that stuff in place and maybe some other things happen, maybe we have enough safeguards to protect us. And maybe we become the benchmark for whatever one should have.
That's what's up. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Good man, Mr. Cross. I said it before off air. It's absolutely dope seeing what you've done during that time, where you're at. And in this new role, you're going to crush it. If there's anything that you want to let folks know how to be able to follow what it is that you're doing, any upcoming promotions, where would they go?
So, it's interesting you brought that. Seltzer is probably the largest growing category in the alcohol industry in general. Something that Anheuser actually was the first to launch a seltzer and just didn't think about it. And the competitors came in and swept by storm. So I have transitioned to seltzers. They're lighter, they're easier to drink, but I think that we've done some really good opportunities to grow. So for us, right now, specifically for the Las Vegas community, we have partnered with one of our wholesalers, Nevada Beverage, and partnered with Three Square Food Bank. And it is a great opportunity where we are looking to sponsor 100,000 meals for Nevadans in need. Already sponsored 45,000 meals up front, and it is a very awesome program. It's actually the first program I was able to create from start to finish in this new role. So I'm very excited about this. So for the months of May and June, any purchase of a 12-pack or 24-pack of Bud Light Seltzer will contribute to sponsoring 6 free meals. So I am excited about that opportunity. We are already at 45,000 meals just from us contributing opportunities up front, and we're looking for local Nevadans to come in and help us support and rally behind a really good cause. I've seen a lot of charitable programs. I hadn't seen anything that really just geared towards common Nevadan. I've seen a lot of stuff geared towards the on-premise accounts, the retailers that are struggling, the people on the strip, that community that has not been effectively been able to work. So I wanted to build a program that was able just to support the common person, and obviously everyone that I just mentioned that has support programs, they're eligible for this as well. But I wanted to make sure we had something that was for the average Nevadan that is struggling and may have been struggling before the pandemic, and now times are even harder. So we wanted the program to kind of come out and roll out. So this is an opportunity for us to feed 100,000 people.
Just to be clear, all that any Nevadan has to do is go to any of their local stores or liquor stores or grocery stores, purchase a Budweiser hard seltzer, and it'll automatically go in to that pool to feed 6 additional meals to the city.
Yeah, it'll be the Bud Light Seltzer, and you just go in and buy a 12-pack or a 24-pack at any of our local retail outlets in the city, Las Vegas, Henderson, North Las Vegas, any of those respective areas. Any purchase of a 12 or 24-pack, you're providing 6 meals for somebody in need. So it's pretty easy.
All right. Well, normally these pods go up on the weekend, so when somebody ends up hearing this part of it, instead of going to go grab whatever they were going to grab, give a good cause, get some of the hard seltzer, good folks, the Anheuser-Busch marketing campaign, and help feed some people in the city. 6 meals is a lot for you just to be able to go get yourself a 12-pack. So salute. I will buy a 12-pack. I'll probably end up, giving 11 of them away. I'll try one. I'll try one, but it'll be for the greater good to at least be able to feed some folks in the city. Mr. Cross, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your effort. Continue to be an outstanding example of how to be able to make yourself do great things in the city of Las Vegas and have a national impact along the way. So until the next time I can catch up with you, and until the next time we speak on these airwaves and on this pod, I appreciate y'all's time. Go listen to past episodes on For The Taste Show at forthetaste.com and follow at For The Taste on Instagram and on Facebook. CJ signing out. Appreciate y'all. Yeah.